Hi, my name is Kimberly Young and I'm publisher at HarperFiction, and really excited to be having tea, tattle and tips with three amazing authors today. Miranda is the Sunday Times bestselling author of 6 books and has been shortlisted twice for the R&A Award, once for Novel of the Year and again for the Contemporary Novel of the Year. She's been published in 7 languages, is a bestseller in many countries and has sold over 500,000 books and counting.
Thank you.
Katy Regan has worked in magazines, started her career at 19 magazine before joining Marie Claire, where she was a columnist. Highlights in that position, and I've never heard these before, Katy, included spending 10 days in the buff on a nudist resort and becoming a footballer's wife for This is all in the name, of course, of investigative journalism. And Katy's first novel, One Thing Led to Another, was published by HarperCollins in 2009, and her latest book, The Story of You, was published in 2014.
Hello!
Next up is Cressida McLaughlin. She's been writing for about 7 years, grew up in London, and is absolutely a passionate reader, writer and blogger, and I'm exceptionally excited to announce live that Cressy has just signed her first 2-book contract with HarperCollins, and we're also going to do a live cover reveal in a little while. But Cressy, congratulations that we can sort of out you publicly as a published author, and yeah, congratulations. Can you tell us a little bit about your book deal?
Yeah, oh, I'm completely over the moon. I mean, it's bonkers to be here and to be kind of announced live on air. But yeah, I've been writing for such a long time and kind of have done that thing of going through lots and lots of rejections, and just kept going really, and kind of really enjoying the stories. And I did have an agent last year, and my book went out on submission. And Kate Bradley at HarperCollins was someone who got in touch with me and just said that she loved kind of my writing, but wanted to discuss a few different ideas with me. So I met up with her, we kind of worked a few up, and then kind of picked on this one that's the one that I've got the deal with. It went through acquisitions, and then at the end of that I was offered a 2-book deal. So it all kind of happened quite quickly and quite in a blur, and I'm just still trying to take it in, but it is the most amazing feeling.
Fantastic. And Miranda, can you tell us about your first book deal?
Yeah, it completely came out of the blue. I put my unpublished novel, which was then called Coffee at Kowalski's, on Autonomy.com, which is HarperCollins' site for unpublished writers. And I did it really just to see if anybody thought it was any good, because I hadn't shown it to anyone, not even my family. And then I got an email from an editor at Avon saying, can you send me the book? And I thought, that's really nice, I'll never hear anything again. And then they offered me a 3-book deal, so I went, and it was actually 2 weeks after I'd lost my job. And I was kind of doing lots of tiny little bits just to try, and I was working in a cafe and I was doing copywriting, and I found as many jobs. The only thing I didn't do was a paper round. And it was after my first job, my first day with a new copywriting company, and I had the phone call then, sat in my car and just crying and getting very funny looks from the security guard because I'd just been offered a 3-book deal, and it just was the most crazy time.
Oh. And Katy, what was yours?
So mine was back in about 2009, and I was writing a column for Marie Claire back then about having a baby with my friend, and everyone sort of said, you know, you should write a novel based on it, and I thought, oh no, I'll never be able to write a novel. But I was working. I had a baby, and I was kind of working in the early mornings and late at night and whenever he was asleep, and tried to get some chapters to an agent. Basically, probably took me and the agent to kind of work on it before it was good enough to send out, about 18 months probably, or a year, 18 months. And then so HarperCollins gave me a deal, and I still remember taking a phone call. I always tell this story to people. I was in my flat at the time with my son, who was 2, and I was feeding him macaroni cheese, and I got this amazing call from my agent saying, you know, I'm delighted to tell you that HarperCollins want to publish your book. And I had no one to sort of like celebrate with. So I pushed him out in his buggy to the off licence and bought a bottle of wine, and him a packet of quavers. So yeah, that's. I was just like, didn't know what to do with myself. I was just walking up and down the road. You know, you must know how that feels, both of you. Like just like headless chicken.
So, we've got a question that's just come in from Gemma Harris, who says she's studying for her degree but finds herself being pulled towards her writing. Any ideas on how to balance the two so she doesn't give up her first love but still gets good marks at university? Okay. So Miranda, if I can ask you this question, because you talked about balance, you know, how do you balance your writing versus other things, especially at the beginning of your career?
I think, well, I wrote 5 novels before I was able to give up the day job. So I used to write in the evening and at weekends. I think the best advice that I'd give, because obviously you have your life and you have to do things, and if you've got, you know, if you're studying as well, that's really important. I'd see it as your hobby, from the point of view of something that you do because you love it. So do it to relax at the end of a day. Allow yourself, even if it's just an hour or half an hour, to just go and hang out with your characters and write your book and get excited about it, and almost take the pressure off yourself. You know, I can guarantee that when you get the call saying you're being offered a publishing deal, you will be doing 101 things at once. But actually, I think that's really good training for being a published author, because you never just have one thing in your life. So that would be my best advice, would be, you know, just do it. Remember that you're doing it because you love it, and take the pressure off your writing, and you'll probably find then that it'll flow a lot more than if you're thinking, I have to try and get a book deal, I have to try and study. You're still being really serious about it, but what you're actually doing is indulging in writing because you love it. And if you're writing because you love it, then you'll find readers who love what you're writing because you love it. If that makes sense.
That's great. And Katy, how do you think about the balance?
Yeah, I mean, definitely my first novel I wrote whilst I was full-time at Marie Claire and had a little baby, so that was quite hard. But I think, like Miranda says, you know, it's really good advice to kind of try and enjoy it, because there is no point really if you're not. And I think also part of don't worry about, like, oh, you know, I need to be doing so many hours a week. Like you say, I think it's the regularity that's important. So to kind of keep the momentum, just even if you're only doing an hour, or even, like you said, half an hour a day, but as long as you stick to that and guard it with your life, it's kind of like you can keep up the momentum. Because I think once you leave it for like long periods of time, then that's when you kind of forget about the characters, and you can do an awful lot of work thinking. Like a lot of the work involved in writing is thinking, wouldn't you say? I guess. And so, you know, you can do that on the bus, walking to college, you know, daydreaming lectures, and that's all really, really valuable. Taking notes whilst you're working out your plot ideas. I do most of my working out plot ideas when I'm walking or doing something else or driving. So don't think you have to actually be sitting down on your bum for it to be writing time as well.
That's great advice. And Cressy, what about you? As you've just got your book deal, and I know that we've given you some quite difficult deadlines to be meeting. How are you finding the balance?
Yeah, it's quite difficult at the moment. I've been able to go down to 4 days a week, so I do kind of work 4 days. But I just make sure that I try and do a little bit every day. I mean, to me, they may be some deadlines, but it's just so exciting. I'm really loving kind of getting into the story, and it is what I'm really passionate about. So, you know, if I'm going out with friends or I want to do things at the weekend, I just make sure that I do a little bit every day, so I'm kind of getting into it every day, and that just kind of keeps the momentum going and keeps me excited, but then still allow myself time off to, you know, go and read a book if I'm just not kind of feeling it, and just not put too much pressure on myself. So that it's something I come back to regularly, and like Katy said, I enjoy kind of going away from it and thinking about the characters while I'm doing other things, and then coming back to it a bit later. And then often I find that if I've got stuck somewhere, I can come back to it a little bit later. So yeah, I try not to put too much pressure on myself.
And Cressy, on that note, Liz Tipping's just come in with a question asking, how do you find, like, writing for passion versus writing for deadlines now you're actually under contract? Does it bring more stress in, or do you sort of ignore the contract deadline? And you're allowed to say this as I'm not your editor.
I do think about it a little bit more, and I find myself going to bed thinking, oh God, have I done enough? Have I kind of got as far as I need to? But I I love writing so much, and I love the stories and I love the characters, that the pressure really isn't too bad, because I know that I just want to create this brilliant story. I want a story that readers can really engage with and that they'll really love. So even though I've now kind of switched over from doing it as a hobby and then trying to get published and to getting this book deal and having the deadlines, I haven't felt it as much as I thought I would. I'm still just kind of coming up to my office, writing away, thinking about it at work when I'm meant to be doing other things, and I'm just kind of, I'm embracing it and loving it, and I don't feel too much pressure at the moment. Just still really, really enjoying it.
Cool, great answer. We've got loads and loads of questions coming through, so I'm just going to flip to another one. And Katy, Regan, I was actually looking at your reviews earlier for the story of you, which was absolutely they're absolutely brilliant on Amazon. And Becca from Becca's Books has come on and asked, you know, what do you think about reviews? How do you cope with negative reviews and good reviews? Do you look at them?
Oh yeah, I do look at them, but I think I used to look at them more than I do now. I think I'm relatively level-headed about it. I do believe, you know, you really can't please everyone, and you know, you only need to go. I mean, I'm in a book group. You only need to go to a book group, and people are actually they expect a lot from writers. You know, it's been quite an eye-opener that people can be quite critical, you know, and not everyone likes the same thing. Even if something I've read for a book group and I've absolutely loved, and someone else has gone, no, it just didn't grab me. So I think you have to kind of remember that. But you know, the lovely reviews do make your day. They really matter. You know, when people take the time to write something nice about something you slaved over, it does really, really cheers you up and does spur you on. I can't lie. But the bad ones. Yeah, I mean, you do kind of wonder if some people are kind of professional bad review writers, you know, that they sort of get some sort of sordid pleasure out of it. But like you say, you really got to, because if you look on, and also I cheer myself up by, you know, looking on other people's books that I've loved, and I'll see that they've got bad reviews as well, and you just think, well, what can you do really? You know, it's just part of the job. Yeah, but I don't get too worried actually.
Good girl. And what about you, Miranda?
I think if I'm feeling strong and happy and confident in my writing, then I will look at reviews. I have moments where if I think that I suddenly can't write, that's not the day to go and look at Amazon, because even if you think you're looking at the 5-star reviews, you're not looking at the 5-star reviews, you're looking at the 1-star review, and then that will haunt you for the rest of your day. I do read. I'm very interested in book bloggers' reviews, because I think they write as a reader, so they'll say, I love this bit, I was shouting at the book here, and you sort of feel like because you lose that when you've worked on a book for a long time, you lose that writer experience, or that's a reader experience. And so yeah, I think I have there's a sort of a small group of book bloggers that I will always go and read their reviews, because they're very fair, and if they don't like something, they'll tell you, so it means that I can learn something from it. But yeah, I've avoided reviews because of I had my daughter 11 months ago, and completely had a crisis of confidence about, you know, my brain doesn't work like it used to, and how am I supposed to write like this now? And so actually going anywhere near reviews where I could end up looking at a negative review wasn't good for me. But I would say that I think as writers, I think if you know, we can learn from them, but you sort of keep remembering that it's sort of, they are for you in a way, I suppose. They're an insight into how somebody sees your book, but they're really somebody's reading experience, which is perfect and valid and wonderful. But sometimes actually not helpful for you as a writer. So I'm kind of I'm in between the two. I thank you for writing reviews. If people write reviews, that's wonderful.
Also,
but yeah.
No, I was just going to say, like, constructive criticism is useful, isn't it? You know, like, you get a review.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. But
yeah, sorry. No, I mean, I had that with my first 2 books. Somebody said they're a bit predictable, so that's when I started putting in twists. So I was like, and I started thinking a lot more about, because I never thought anyone would read my books. I think you then progress to suddenly think, oh, people are reading my books. How can I give them the best ride possible during this time that they're spending with my words? And from that point of view, they're absolutely invaluable. And the best reviews are the ones that say, I really like this because, and I really didn't like that because then you can go, okay, well, you know, maybe I haven't done that in that job, so maybe I'll do it next time. And yeah.
And how do you, Katy, I'll put this to you on a similar tack. So if you do have, as Miranda sort of said, a crisis of confidence or something happens in your writing, do you have any tips on how you can overcome writer's block? Have you ever?
Oh yeah, I'm great at writer's block. I think yeah, you're asking the wrong person. I think well, yeah, I am terrible for writer's block, and I do suffer from it, and I think that it's kind of, it can, if you don't keep a check on it, honestly, it can kind of spiral out of control, where you kind of you lose all the sort of vision of what you're trying to do, and you're kind of like, you know, so I do really know how it feels, and it can feel really like, oh my god, I mean, I just can't write anything, and what's the point of this, what am I trying to say, what is this, you know, I've forgotten how to write words. So I think when I get like that, I leave it, actually. I mean, personally for me, I leave it for a bit, so I will go away, even do something else for the whole day, because I think if I've got myself, you know, depending on how bad it is, sometimes it's just like you've got writer's block because you're maybe not 100% concentrating, actually, and you know, you need to turn off social media, or you really need to kind of make yourself do it. But if you've got yourself into really sort of bad writer's block, then I found the only thing is to get up and walk away and leave it for a little bit, because you'd be amazed, you come back and you'll think, oh, it wasn't that bad, what, you know, it was almost like hormonal or something. What was I thinking? Yeah.
Brilliant. We've got lots and lots of people joining us now, and Jen Winters has just said hello to everybody from the US, and lots of people saying what lovely company we are. I think people else is fine, more, we'll probably be here all evening, so or I will. And also Abby Jones says hi. So my next question, and actually Anne Tansley Thomas and Abby Jones have sort of asked similar things. One is trying to write from has written short stories and is now trying to progress her writing to a novel. And Abby's asking what's the starting point when you come to a story? And Cressy, I'm going to ask you this first because you know, I know that you're sort of at the start of your writing career in a way, but not in other ways. So what's your starting point, or what do you think is the difference between writing a short story and a novel?
Well, I started out doing a kind of local creative writing class, and that was focusing on lots of short stories and lots of poetry. And I found that when I got to the end of that, I just had this idea that I really, really wanted to write. And as I started to kind of think about it and develop it, I realised that actually it was big enough to be a much longer thing. And I thought, well, this is it. This is the time that I kind of start my first kind of novel, as it were. And I think that because I wrote 4 books before this, and they've all really come from a central idea. So I've kind of thought of a nugget of an idea, and then I've kind of started to think around that. So I haven't thought necessarily of the characters first. I've just thought, what do I want this book to kind of be about, and to kind of tell people. And I've gone from that, and you just start kind of jotting down ideas. You'll be surprised kind of how quickly one leads on to another, and you'll kind of think of other themes, and oh, there could be this character over here. And I would just say, if you've written some short stories and you want to think of something bigger, if you've got an idea, just start jotting it down and see what comes out of it, because quite often it'll just start flowing and turn into something bigger than you expected.
And Katy, if I can ask you that question next, you know, going from being a journalist to being a novelist, what's the sort of key differences for you?
Yeah, really different. I think, like Cressida says, I think my novels ideas tend to come out of a situation, so it'll tend to be, you know, obviously journalism completely different to that. You're dealing with facts, you know, so in a way it's much easier. I find journalism much easier, because also I think with novel writing there's just so many possibilities. It's almost like this, you know, you can fry your head with all the possibilities of where you can go in the story, and I think that's probably the key difference and why I find it much more difficult but also much more satisfying than writing features. But I would say that I probably start with a situation, so yeah, a concept, and then from there I will think about the main character I want to tell that story, or to kind of who would be best to narrate that, and then also how I can keep, you know, the sort of stakes and the conflicts and people wanting to carry on reading. How you can, I think you were saying, Miranda, how you can make it the best ride. I think that's a really good way of putting it. How you can make this story as exciting as possible. Yeah.
Great. And Miranda, can I ask you a slightly different question? This is from Vicky. Have you ever got halfway through a book and thought, oh my God, it's absolutely crap? There's no particular reason I'm asking you this. And if you have, what do you do? Or even if it's the first chapter, you know, have you had that, oh my God, what I've written is crap moment, and how did you get out of it?
I think it's I think you always hit a moment when you're writing the first draft where you think it's crap. I was talking about it, I met some we had a writer's day earlier today, and we were talking about it, and we said it's normally about 29,500 words. You tend to go, this is rubbish, I can never do it ever again. Yeah, I had one book where the first draft, it was really, really hard to write, and I love writing the first draft because it's before anybody else has a say in it, so it's kind of my baby. And I was about 29,500 words in, and I suddenly realised that she was doing the wrong job, and actually her job had become the book, and it actually wasn't about that. So I scrapped it, and it was really hot, and I made so many copies of it just in case. I actually woke up the next morning and thought it wasn't crap and I could go back and do it again. I think the advice that I'd give is that your first draft, it doesn't really matter. It's kind of, I always say my first drafts are like Frankenstein's first attempt at a monster, so they're a mess anyway. And I think since I stopped trying to make first drafts perfect, which is when I became a published author, I realised that there's so much work that goes on afterwards. It's easier to let things go, but I do have a file of stuff that I haven't quite got the chance to delete yet, and there's some real humdingers in that. So I think, yeah, it's just, I think it's just, you know, you get a feeling if something isn't working, and there's a different feeling between this is hard and it's getting boring and I need to get on to the next bit, and when you read it and you think, I don't actually want to know what happens next. And I think that's, you've got to go with how you feel. It's an absolute key. You're the first reader of your book because you're writing it and discovering it, and if you don't care about the characters, you can't expect anyone else to. So I think that the more you write, the easier it is to get rid of stuff. But yeah, you do have to. I make lots of copies and then laugh at them later.
Yeah. And Kevin Lowe has come and said hi to everybody and has got questions.
Hi, Kev.
Hi, Kev.
We're showing the love to Kev. So the question I'm going to pick out that he's asked, because it totally relates to that, is what do you think is the best way to plot a story? Is it like putting sticky notes everywhere? Is it scribbling little nuggets in a notebook? Katy, I'm going to ask you this question first, because you know you've talked a lot about how you write and how you plot. Have you what sort of?
Yes. Well, I wish someone would tell me. I think, well, I think it's different with every book, and I think sometimes I use the. In fact, as you can see here, my desk is now covered with these things. So I'm doing that at the moment for my new one. So I often write on those. But I think knowing kind of where you want to end is always good. I think like having like an end scene for me is quite important, so I know sort of where they're going. And I tend to know about the first 3 or 4 chapters and where they end, and then the middle I just kind of work out as I go along, to be honest. With lots of rewrites, as you know, Kim, and lots of kind of changes and go backs and forwards. But Yeah, I wish I could say that I have this kind of system that works every time, but I just don't. I've tried that, but for me, it has to be organic, and it's like a layering effect. It kind of starts, you know, and it kind of builds organically with kind of layer upon layer. So yeah, but I do use these. I do use these a lot.
Luckily, your icing always tastes pretty good, Katy. So. And Cressy, what about you? Are you a post-it noter or a plotter?
Yeah, and I'm pretty similar to Katy actually. I've always started kind of knowing where I'm going to begin and knowing what I want the ending to be, and then just seeing what happens in the middle, and then kind of printing off draft and scribbling on them and post-it noting all the way through. But actually with this one, because I've got some strict deadlines, I sat down and I plotted out all my characters, and I plotted out every chapter and what scenes were going to happen in each chapter all the way through the book. And I know that they're going to kind of change, and I know it will be a kind of different process. But for me, I find that really, really useful. And that now when I'm writing chapters, because I know what needs to happen in them, I felt a lot freer about being able to enjoy it and not worrying, well, will this work, and then what will happen next. So I've kind of tried two different styles really, and I think that they both have their benefit. Like Katy said, it really is different for everyone, and you just have to see what's comfortable for you and what way works best.
Kevin's just asked the question, and I have to say it's probably one of the most interesting questions I've ever read. So Miranda, it's coming to you first, and I don't know how I'd answer this as an editor. So we always talk about an author finding her voice. When you're writing different characters' points of view or different books, how do you find your own voice when you're trying to get your characters to find their voices too?
That's a good question.
Wow, that's a great question, Kev. No idea how to answer that. No, I don't. I think sometimes it's instinctive. Sometimes a character comes to you straight away. So in my latest book, I'll Take New York, it's written from a male-female perspective, and that's the first time that I've written it that way. Jake came straight away, and B, the girl in it, took a while to get there. I think I try lots of different things. Sometimes I do what I call taking my characters down the pub for a drink, or I take them out somewhere, and I think about how they would talk about it. So it's sometimes useful to write like a little script, and it won't ever make it into the book, but it kind of informs your idea, and you get a rhythm for the way that they speak. This is the time to watch a lot of TV as well for research. Sometimes it's based on sometimes it's literally I just absolutely. Sometimes it's Hugh Dancy. He's called. How does he speak? I'll just watch him for the next hour and make notes. But yeah, I think it depends on each one of the characters, and it's very much like getting to know new people. That for some people you talk and you click straight away and you get their sense of humour and you know what they're doing, and other people you almost have to dig a little bit and listen to them. So I think it's a lot of daydreaming and kind of trial and error really to find it. And I think again it's that whole thing about when you're writing a first draft is to take the pressure off yourself and say, I'm just playing with these characters, I'm hanging out with them, I'm seeing what happens. But yeah, it does vary. It's completely different for every character. So I hope
I absolutely love that as a piece of advice, to sort of write like a mini script between your characters.
Yeah, I do that.
Like, perfect nugget. So Katy, you do that as well. Is there anything else that?
Yeah, well, I do that, and also I'm a bit weird. I don't know any other writer who does this, but I have to know what they look like. So I have to actually literally have a picture of them. Like, it will normally be some random person that I've seen on Facebook, or an actress or an actor, or someone from a documentary, or someone that I've seen, and it just clicks for me, and I go, that's them, that they encapsulate the spirit of that person. And then once I've got that person, like there's a character in the book I'm writing at the moment, and actually I've worked out that he really looks like my dad, but that's just really coincidental. I sent it to my dad and I was like, separated at birth. He's an actor, but I won't tell you which actor it is. But once I knew his face, that was it. The voice and everything just came, and it feels then like you're kind of like I'm sort of method acting. But so I always have a really, really clear idea in my head about what they look like. And that really helps. And also, like you said, writing scripts. And I once read a book by Louise Doughty. I would never know how to So it was like a sort of how to write book, and one of her pieces of advice was have your character break their thumb. How do they react? So sometimes I do that.
Oh, that's good.
Lindsay Kelk has just sent us a lovely message saying, can you stop being so very good, because her and Lucy Robinson are feeling the pressure because they're up next. But also, long hair game, ladies, from Lindsay. Well, I'm not. I think we're obviously. Well, I'm in flattering light, but. So on that note, on me looking at my hair and hoping that I'm never on Katy Regan's bedside table as a photo in case I'm one of her heroines.
Exactly.
Or maybe on a dartboard when I'm chasing the deadline. Yeah, so on that note, I think our time is up. So thank you all so much for hanging out, and sorry for our techno problems yesterday. And I suppose on the final note, Cressida McLaughlin, congratulations on joining both Katy Regan and Miranda Dickinson in your first official author chat. And yeah, here's to the #Romance15 Festival. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.